So this is on communication, as I already told you. The it's not about teaching how to communicate, because I'm sure that you're all good communicators already. So I don't want to teach you how to communicate, because this is something that we have been doing from right from our birth. Like day one on this professional life. So I'm not here to teach you how to communicate, but this will be basically on reflecting our own communication skills, and to see whether there is some modifications needed in the way that we communicate. If you feel that there is some modifications to be made, free to do that. And if you have a feeling that after listening to this lecture, if you feel that we are all already good communicators, I don't want you to change that. Continue with what you are already doing now. But this is mostly a reflective session where we will be communicating where we will be exploring our own skills, and see whether done to our present communication style. That's what we are looking at. So there is a famous quoting from one of the books. Especially I'm in the area of palliative care. So in palliative care, communication is a very important thing in for any profession that matter. But when it comes to palliative care, it is very, very important, because you are communicating with a patient who is chronically ill, who is incurably ill, or their parents or guardians or loved ones. So it becomes very, very very, very important. You have to be very careful while preparing. Searching for some of the books that I could read, and I came across this beautiful book called I Don't Know What to Say, and the other one is The Breaking Bad News by Robert Buckman. So Robert Buckman, in his book I Don't Know What to Say, he says that almost invariably the act of communication is an important part of therapy. So act of communication is an important part of therapy, and occasionally it is the only constituent. So if you have a patient with you, I most of you are doctors, nurses, and or in the medical profession. So when you are with a patient, every time you won't be giving a medicine, every time you won't be giving an injection, you will be just visiting them. Or maybe when the patient is shutting down, and you don't have your medicines working, still there is this element of communicating, either with the patient or the family. So occasionally he says that in your treatment, um, treat a patient, if you decide what injection to give, what tablet to give, you think 100 times which is the correct medicine to give in this particular situation, which is the correct tablet to give, which is the correct injection to give this in this particular time. But you never plan your communication skills, that what I'm going to say, how I'm going to listen, what I'm not going to say, what I'm not going to do in front of that patient or the family. You will never plan your your communication skills there. And unfortunately, it is administered in subtherapeutic doses. Here, what he says is that unfortunately, the communication part is administered in subtherapeutic doses. Your drug treatment, you may be doing it in a very optimal level. You'll be giving the correct amount of drugs, but your communication often is administered in subtherapeutic doses. So tell me, do you agree with this or not, as doctors and nurses? So you can use your chat box. Tell me your views on this. It's sad that I can't be there physically, but at least if we can make this more interactive through the chat box, that'll be good. Yeah, is that it's good to see that you agree to that. So that means we need to work in subtherapeutic doses. like in a book. After doing a study with some of the patients and their family during very critical illness period, after they were cured, or after, in some cases the patient died, but after that, these people who are doing this study had a conversation with the family, and they were asked to describe their doctor or nurse in just one word, based on the behavior of that doctor or nurse, including communication skills in that particular situation. So, based on that experience, they were asked to name their doctor or nurse in just one word. And this was some of the interesting comments that came up. Some of them and described their doctors and nurses as inexperienced messengers. Because nurse, it's not about their treatment. It's not about their expertise in treatment. It's about how they communicate. It's about how they behave with their patients and their bystanders or their family members. So, based on that, they were asked to describe that their doctor was, or their nurse was, emotionally burdened. Not the patient, not the family, but the doctor was, or the nurse was emotionally burdened. And some of them were ready and rough and ready experts. So if you ask a difficult question to a doctor or nurse, they have the answer, which is very rough and ready, without considering any emotions of the patient. So that was another comment that came up. The fourth one is benevolent but tactless expert. I think most of us fall to this category. We are all benevolent. We are, genuinely benevolent, but we don't know how to handle the situation tactfully. So some of them said that my doctor, my nurse is very benevolent, but tactless. Fifth one, the distanced doctor or nurse. It's not that you'll be. It's not about the physical distance. What you're talking about here. The nurse or the doctor will be very close to the. Physically will be close to the patient or the family, but that warmth is not felt by them. They always feel a distance between you. Between them and you, or the doctor or the nurse. And the one is empathetic professional. So this also, I want you to reflect on this. If I ask your patients, I'm sure that you will be already treating your patients, and you are into the business of providing care to the people that visit you. So if I ask your patients, based on your engagement with them, what do you think will be the answer for that? If I ask them to give one title to you, based on the experience of engaging with you, what would they call you? Inexperienced messenger, emotionally burdened, rough and ready expert, benevolent but tactless. What will they call you? So just think about this. I don't want you to say this, but you know, just think of it, and maybe something else that is not in the list also. But ideally, what we need to hear is, my doctor or my nurse is an empathetic professional. But are we really getting there? That is a question that we have to ask for ourselves. Yeah. So this is an interesting scenario, a bit funny as well. So think about this. One fine morning, a husband and wife decides to go on a road trip. Wife is driving, and husband is sitting comfortably near to the wife in the front seat itself. On the way, the car reaches a traffic signal point where the signal is green. So wife is driving, when and they are reaching a traffic signal, and husband says, oh, see, it's green. So what are the possible responses from the wife? I want you to use the chat box. I hope you got the scenario. Husband and wife, they are driving. Jose Marino says, I can see. Let's have more comments here. So they have reached a traffic signal. Wife is driving. Husband is sitting, next to the wife in the front seat itself. And when they reach the signal, husband says, "Oh, it's green." Uh, Catherine says, I know. I know can be, in different tones as well. It can be, very harsh, saying that I know, I see, I have eyes, and you don't have to, say that. Another thing will be in a very polite way. Also, you can see that I know. Some more comments so that, let's all think about this and bring some more comments here on the chat. I can see, I know. Anything else? Don't be a backseat driver. Okay, let's go. Okay, yeah, let's go. Okay, or all, I mean, in a way, it's uh, quite polite. Don't be a backseat driver. It's not so polite. So what could be the most important thing that makes the wife to comment like this? What could be the most important thing? Like when the husband says it's green, some of the comments were like, thank you, or let's go, it's good that it's green. And some of the comments were like, I know, you don't have to teach me. Oh, yes, with a smile. That's good. um, uh, yeah, so some of the comments were not so good or not so polite. Some of them were good. So what could be that deciding factor there? Any guess? Husband always does it. That's from your. I hope it's not from your. Experience, personal experience. So, what could be that important thing that makes the wife to uh, comment like that? What could be that important thing? Tone and facial expression, the kind of relationship that have. Absolutely true. It is all based on the relationship that you have. So whenever people talk to you, you don't respond to that person in a very mechanized way. There is the relationship comes first. You only have relationship talking, you only have relationship hearing, you only have relationship listening, talking, listening, hearing. It's not something separate from the relationship. You put that person first. What kind of relationship that I have with that person, you work on that first, and then come in. So the best, if some very good comments are coming on this occasion, like a thumbs up, or it's good that it's green, and thank you for telling me that, all these good comments, that means they have a very good rapport. Of course, the mood, the tone, everything has got an important are important deciding factors. But the first and foremost thing, how we react to people, how we communicate to people, is based on the relationship that you have with them. So that means that the takeaway lesson here is that whomever you are communicating with, whether it is a patient, their family, your friends, your work colleagues, the most important thing is to build a beautiful relationship with them. You don't need years or months to create a good relationship. Just a smile, just a touch, the way you talk, your tone, your interest in their personal well-being, everything. Even if you are a very very difficult or very hurry setting, like in hospital, but like your body language, your smile, the way you look at them, this can all build some confidence in them, some rapport in them. So it'll take only few seconds to build a good rapport. You may not be talking everything to that person, but at least you will feel comfortable to talk to that person. So that means, the most important part is building your relationship. Yeah, 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 I get that in the chat box. Yeah, thank you. So moving on, here is an scenario. It's a communication part between a doctor and a patient. So let's see how it goes. The doctor says, "Hello, Mister," and calls his or her name. How have you been doing? So the patient says, "I don't know. I guess I'm wondering why all this is happening to me. I know." So the doctor says, I know this has been really hard on you. We talked about this before, and these medications do have the tendency to make people sick and can also make them feel quite down. Tell me, how much have you been able to walk around? Last time we met, you could only walk about 10 yards. I can walk to the mailbox and back about 30 yards. It's just so terribly hard. That's what the patient says. So doctor says, sounds like you're doing better than last time. I'm really happy to hear that you can work further. I was very worried about how this was going to affect your life. Do you feel like the home care nurse is providing you the support that you need? So this is a communication scenario between a doctor and a patient. Now I want you to think about some of the what are some of the good communication behaviors that the doctor has shown here, the doctor has exhibited here. Any comments there? Some of the good communication. Do you think that this person is a good doctor based on this communication scenario? Good or not so good? Or could be a better doctor? What do you think? Let's again use a chat box, please. I want you to pick some of the good communication behavior from the doctor's point of view, and some of the communication behaviors that was not so good, which could have been improved. Take a minute to think about it. Any comments? It's good. Why do you think it's good? What are some of the communication behaviors which made you feel like that? Affirmation, great. Anything else? Some of the good things that he done, and what are some of the bad things or some of the things that could have been improved? Very encouraging doctor. Anything else? Anything that he could have done better? Empathy is there. Yeah. Okay, so we'll do one thing. At the end of the session, I will screen this again, once again, and let's see if there are some more things that you could pick up based on this, some of the things that we are going to discuss in next few minutes. Uh, yeah. See, when people talk to each other, whether it is a doctor-nurse communication, whether it's a nurse, patient, yeah, he could have acknowledged that walking distance was still telling. That's a great point in the chat box. So whenever you talk with people, whether it is with patients or your work colleagues or your friends, when someone talks to you, when someone communicates to you, this is the usual way that you respond. Sometimes you're very factual. You only talk about facts. So like in the last scenario, when the patient says that I can walk 30 yards, but it's terribly hard. You're just sticking on the fact that he's walking more distance, but not the quality, the quantity. It's a fact that he's walking little more, but maybe with greater difficulty. But you're not paying your attention to that part. You're only paying attention to the fact that he can walk a little more. So sometimes you're factual. You have to be factual sometimes, but being factual always will not help your communication. Sometimes you're hostile. Sometimes you get irritated. You may get the way the person talks, the way the person communicates, you get hostile. And you sometimes you can be very positively hostile, but sometimes it all affects the relationship between you both. Sometimes you're reassuring. When you talk, you reassure a lot, but reassurance again has got two parts. Like there's positive reassurance where that whatever you're telling will happen to that person. So that person, you have some doubts about treatment protocol, drugs. If you're reassuring them in a very positive way, you should see that you are giving the correct information. Will I be cured if a cancer patient in the fourth stage who he's having I mean, if you are sure that that person is not going to be cured, and then the patient asks you, will I be cured? You cannot say that everything will be all right. So that's reassuring, but you're telling a lie. That will help that person in that particular time, but later it will create problems that will affect the trust between you both. So that is a negative reassurance. You're telling a lie. So when you reassure, be positive. But then how can you be I mean, in such difficult situations, like how can you communicate that person without affecting that trust? That's altogether a different topic, where we have to have a separate discussion. But make sure that when you reassure, you're positive. You know that what you're saying is going to happen. And sometimes you're judgmental. Every one of us, when we communicate, this is some, you already make a prejudgment about that person, about that situation, and then you respond. That judgment may be wrong. So it's better not to judge and talk. Sometimes you are silence. If you talk to a patient, if you break a bad news, that person is very silent for some time. That silence itself is communicating to you that he is absorbing the shock. When you're in a difficult situation, it's good now. So sometimes you are silent. Sometimes you're apathetic. Sometimes people are apathetic, don't have any concern, and which is really wrong. So that's how people sometimes respond. Sometimes you're very sympathetic, sometimes you're very empathetic. So these are the kind of usual responses that people have when we communicate to each other. So which the ideal one is being empathetic, but it may not be possible to be empathetic every time you communicate. So but here, what is the difference between being sympathetic and empathetic? I think that'll be a good point to discuss. Any comments? What's the difference between being sympathetic and empathetic? Any comments? Okay, so sympathetic is feeling sorry for others. Maybe your body language, your all these things. It's not bad to have sympathy for yeah, sympathetic is feeling the other person's experience, sympathetic is understanding. Absolutely. So it's not bad to be sympathetic, but when you respond, when you show your emotions to, when you show your I mean, you're feeling to other person, it's better to be empathetic. If nobody needs your sympathy. Sympathy is being sorry, and I'm really sorry that this has happened to you. So that kind of things may not be as helpful as always. So when you're dealing with a person, especially in a difficult situation, what you have to see is that you have to place yourself in that situation. And if I'm talking to a person who is in 4-stage cancer, I have to place myself there. And then I'm thinking, how would I expect the other person to I mean, deal with me, to communicate with me. You're having that thought, and that kind of thinking for some time, and then you're engaging or communicating with a patient. That's what Robert Buchan talked about, subtherapeutic doses. So if you have that thought in your mind first, if you understand that person, if you place yourself in that person's shoes, and then you communicate, so that means you'll be much more I mean, careful. You'll be much more empathetic. You'll be much more using a lot of common sense and a lot of values or skills that's needed for a positive environment or communication. So that's very important. What's the golden rule of communication? Anyone? Any communication scenario? What could be the golden rule of communication? Any guess? Please use the chat room. If you have any guess on this, what is that single most golden rule of communication? Any guess? Let's have some comments in the chat box. Absolutely, absolutely. Listening. Yeah. So listening is the golden rule of communication. uh, Active listening is the golden rule of communication. So why, what is the objective behind listening? Usually when we listen, we have an I mean, the goal of responding to that person. Actually, we listen not to respond, but the listening should be aimed at understanding. So whether you are listening to respond, whether you're listening to understand, so the best thing is to listen to understand, not to respond. You can respond only when it is needed. You don't need to respond to anything and everything that people communicate to you. The first and foremost objective behind your listening should be to understand, not to respond. So that you have to be very careful about. And then this is what most usually people do. That they do a lot of talking. They do all the I mean everything. Even though you are there to communicate with the person, you dominate, you talk everything, and when you are about to leave, the other person is asking, can I talk at least now? So you don't give space to other people. So here some of the communicators are like this. They don't consider the other person. They don't give space to them. They just keep talking, talking and talking, and when you're leaving, the other person, you have eaten all the flesh out of him, and that person is asking, can I talk at least now? So don't be like this. And this picture is to remind you that all of us have two big ears and a small tongue which is hardly visible. So that means the natural call itself is listen more and talk less, right? So that's very important. This speech, I think this picture talks a lot about how to communicate. Yeah. And listening is nothing but, listening is totally different from hearing. Hearing is very passive, listening is very active. So listening means paying attention, focusing with the intention of understanding and responding appropriately. So the prime intention here is understanding, and then responding as and when needed, but in a very appropriate way. So these are some of the things that happens in listening. Hearing is just one part of that. So in listening, you first hear, and then after that there are some other things which are happening. So decoding. Decoding is once you hear the message in your brain, you are decoding it. That means you're thinking about it, you are sensing, you are filtering the message, and then you are comprehending, you are trying to understand what the message is, and then you are adding meaning to that, and then you are remembering what you have decoded, what you have heard, what you have decoded, and then responding to that. So this cycle should happen before responding. If this happens, you're listening. Or if it is just the hearing part, you are not an active listener, just a passive listener, or just you are hearing and then just responding, but without giving any meaning to the messages that the other person has sent to you. So listening has got all this. This may take only few seconds to happen in your brain, but make sure that this is happening. And some tips for active listening before we wind up the presentation. One, as we talked earlier, the first and foremost thing is that building rapport. So building rapport can be just a smile, a touch, a pleasant face, anything, and then eye contact. It doesn't mean that you have to stare at the person every time, but at least when I talk to someone, if I look at their eyes, I know that that person is interested in what I am communicating. Your posture, if you're sitting, it's better to lean. It's a small tip that if you lean forward, that means, come on, tell me you are interested in that. In the communication, and it's better to avoid distractions that happen here, like phone, fidgeting, many other things. And also, when you have a doubt while you are communicating with a person, if that person is sending you a message that you are not able to understand, what we often do is that we assume, oh, this might be the message that he's trying to, or this might be the thing that he's trying to communicate. But you can go wrong there. So it's better to avoid assuming. You reflect back, ask that person, clarify it, and whenever you are done with the communication, paraphrase it, summarize it and tell the other person and see and check whether you've got it right. And especially when it is a difficult situation, that person may take may take as much time as possible, like there will be a lot of emotions and other things. So be patient, don't interrupt, and allow silence. So especially in a difficult communication scenario, if somebody is talking about their illness which is very critical, he may sometimes be silent, sometimes be crying, sometimes be going mad. So this all happens. So that silence or any other emotions you have to acknowledge, be there, just a touch or allowing that person some space for silence is all important. And don't start planning what to say next. So what happens usually is that, when a person is talking to you, before once it starts, the other person is talking to you and you start listening. Sometimes what we do is that we start planning in our head how to say, what to say next, how to communicate, how to respond to this person. So you start planning, and then you lose a lot of messages that are the important thing that the other person has trying to tell you. So don't do that. Don't start planning what to say next. Just be there, listen, and then you can take your time and then respond. And don't jump to conclusion. That person may be midway, and then you've just assumed the conclusion of that communication. Don't do that. And if you don't know anything about something that the other person is talking, if that person has a very critical doubt that he wants to clear with you, and if you don't know that, um, you know uh, just say so, that I don't know, I'm sorry that I don't know this, but I'll get back to you with after discussing with someone. That only will make the other person feel that you are genuinely interested in the well-being of that person. You're just not saying anything. And ask lot of questions. It's not like interrogating, but questions can be a good tool to make the other person talk to you. When we say that the golden rule of communication is active listening, you know, the tool that you have to make the other person talk is asking questions. So there are a lot of different kinds of questions. Judgmental questions, where you judge the other person and then you ask, like, oh, you used to smoke. If a person comes up with a lung cancer, you are already judging that this person used to smoke, and you are framing that questions like that. So that's a judgmental question. Leading question is, you already have an answer with you, you already prefer an answer, and that you are leading that person to that answer. Like, the medicine that I gave you yesterday must have brought your pain, right? So that means that person is forced to say that my pain is down now. So that's kind of a leading question, where you are you are leading that person to that preferred answer. The other one is closed-ended questions, where you don't give much space for that person to speak. Did you sleep? Did you eat? So there will be either yes or either no. It's not just yes or no questions, but those questions where the other person has got only limited response to you. So that's closed-ended question. Open-ended is that if you ask a question, that the person is given a chance or space to talk as much as possible. Like, how are you doing? How are you feeling? What made you say like that? Tell me more. All these things are open-ended, where the other person, you are engaging, or you are encouraging the other person to communicate as much as he or she needs. So avoid judgmental questions, avoid leading questions. You may have to use closed-ended questions sometimes, but ask more of open-ended questions. And when you talk to people, when you are in a genuine interest of listening to people, uh, you know there will be some barriers that you have to look forward to. Barrier is nothing but anything that stop the concentration and allow the mind to wander off. It can be environmental barriers like noise, an uncomfortable environment, linguistic barriers like jargons that you use, or some of the medical terms or technical terms, or complex sentences. So that you have to see that you are not making a linguistic barrier, which affects the communication. Some can be psychological barriers will be there, anxiety, worry, depression. Physiological will be there, maybe a discomfortable, morning, or some tiredness, a headache, or something like that. Some physical issues will be there. And perceptual barriers like mannerisms or attitude of the doctor or attitude of the patient, and based on that you already have a perception between you both, that also affects the communication. And sometimes it is the content barrier, that the person wants to know something, then you are talking about something else, so that content is not interested to that person. That content is not interested to you. This can be a barrier as well. And then dealing with this is the last part of the presentation, I'll stop now. Dealing with unpleasant emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. This is critically important, because when, as doctors, as nurses, you usually deal with the unpleasant emotions, thoughts, and behaviors, especially when you are in palliative care. So think about this: you just had a verbal fight with your neighbor, you're back home upset. So what could be some of the emotions, what could be some of the thoughts, and how would you react to that situation? See, you had a verbal fight with your neighbor when you met him or her on the road, then you're back home and you are very upset. So what could be the emotions? You may be angry, you may be sad. uh, what could be the thoughts? I should not have told him like that, I should not have done that. Or I'm really sad that this has happened. What to how to talk to him next, how to mend this, how to work on this situation. So all these thoughts will be there in your mind, and your actions will be based on that. You won't be eating anything, maybe you'll be angry, you'll be showing anger towards the person near you. You'll be sitting quietly in a corner. So these are all the reactions or the behavior that you exhibit when you are in such an unpleasant situations. So in such situations, these are some things that would help you. If this is a technique called EVE technique. EVE, sympathetic statements, use validating statements, and then exploratory questions. So I can see how upsetting this is to you. If a person tells you that I am going through this and this, and you see and use tell that I can see how upsetting this is to you, that means that you are that person feels that you are tuned into them. And a validating statement, an example for validating statement is, it's very common for people to feel this way. So that if that person is going through a complex emotion, and you say that, don't worry, this is common for people to feel this way, and so that they feel, the result will be they feel more normal. And exploratory questions, like, can you tell me, if that person tells something unusual, you are asking that person, can you tell me what made you think like that? So that means that's an example for an exploratory question or an open question. So the result will be, they feel that you have genuine interest in what they have to say. So we have already discussed this slide in the beginning. So there are a few more things that you can pick up now if you think about this based on our discussion so far. So like here, first one is an opening question, which is a good thing from the doctor. But I don't know, I guess I'm wondering why all this is happening to me. When the patient says there should be more exploratory questions. The doctor should have asked, what made you think like that? Tell me more. And but instead of that, the doctor is just talking like, this has been really hard on you. I know this has been really hard on you is a validating statement, but then there is no exploratory questions. So the doctor should have asked more exploratory questions. And if you look at the slide itself, the patient is talking very less and the doctor is talking more. So that means the doctor should have asked more exploratory questions and should have listened more. So that golden rule is missing, exploratory questions is missing, and then the person is sticking more on quantity rather than quality. So these are some of the tips, some of the things that we can reflect on, and using this we can think about our own communication skills and see whether we need to do some modifications, corrections in our own style. So that was the only intention of this short presentation. Thank you.